This is a new phone. Let's see.
Mr. Chair, we're live on YouTube if you're ready to start.
Almost ready to start. Huh?
Call the meeting to order, the Planning Commission to order this April 6, 2022. If staff could call roll, please.
Robert Estrada. Brian Parsons is excused. Lynn Larson.
Here.
Philip Combs.
Present.
Paul Wagaman.
Present.
Ryan Pearson.
Here.
Don Daniels.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you. Before us, we have the minutes of March 30th, 2022. I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Larson made a motion first. Do I have a second? Second. Mr. Estrada, second. Any discussion, changes? Seeing or hearing no changes, all those in favor by saying aye? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, minutes passed as written. Thank you. And any changes to our agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And now it's a public comment period at this time. So we got public comment. Anyone wishing? I do have Mr. Kaufman here tonight. If you step up to the podium over there and state your name and the city you reside in, we appreciate you coming out tonight.
Thank you. My name is Chris Kaufman. I live at 6627 Hilltop Lane in Lakewood and have substantially over a 50-year background in water resources. And I have been following a number of items and happen to have followed the Shoreline Act from the time of Wilbur versus Gallagher, which was a Supreme Court case which required eventually a vote on a shoreline management program in the state. And one of the things I've noticed over time is that there's a fair amount of confusion in the arenas that I'm in terms of scope of activity of various programs. And there's a distinct difference between water resource management, water quality management, and statutory requirements and authorities of various jurisdictions. Water supply management by the Lake, in our case, the Lakewood Water District, and the state and the city surface water management, which basically is a flood control program. It's my experience having managed surface water for the state of Washington, included a whole variety of activities well beyond what the city has responsibilities for. And it's very confusing to the public when they see something like the shoreline management program perhaps having responsibilities for water quality. Maybe, in my opinion, not. But people get confused over taking care of stream side vegetation, et cetera, when there's no water in the stream. So who's looking at the management of water in Lakewood? The Chamber of Clovers Watershed Council has very limited jurisdiction. I'm on their executive board as historian. And I think what I would leave you folks with is attempting to make clear the scope of the different programs that you're involved with to the extent you can. Because again, in my discussions and input I get from people, there's a lot of confusion. And I have been for 23 years a member of the Stream Team program for Gravelly Lake where I live. The city decided to withdraw funding support for the Conservation District's program there. The Conservation District decided to continue to support us, but why the city dropped back from a very efficient volunteer program is totally beyond me, and I understand the details with the consultant and what have you. And I don't want to get into that. So I would like to see in some of the language that you had in your program tonight, struck the language that supported the city supporting the volunteer stream team program. And I understand the consultant's report and what have you, but normally in the area of water resources, and again, I've had responsibility statewide for that program, you normally look at least 28 to 35 years of data before you begin to draw any conclusions whatsoever. And I believe there's only a little more than 20 years of data that we've gathered under this. Again, Conservation District is taking it on themselves to continue the program. So thus volunteers are continuing that program. So I'm willing to answer any questions you may have, but that my intent would be, to the extent you have jurisdiction, being the executives having advisory jurisdiction, I would just suggest a reconsideration of the funding, which is, as I understand it, less than $20,000 a year of support for the Conservation District in their volunteer lake monitoring program. And again, I keep track of Clover Creek fairly closely because Clover Creek creates a groundwater mound, which then travels westerly through Gravelly Lake and sustains our lake level. And our lake level in Gravelly Lake varies by as much as 11.6 feet. And I happen to have the gauge of record on Gravelly Lake and have kept track of it directly and through other folks for about 80 years. I've only lived there 50 years, but Cy Happy and others have lived on the lake for a lot longer. And so anyway, that's my main point here, is to see if, to the extent you may have authority, having jurisdiction to, support the meager funds for the ongoing volunteer program.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Kaufman. Appreciate it. Do we have anyone else signed up or online for public comment?
Not for the public comment portion, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Seeing or hearing and no one else signed up for public comment, we'll close the public comment period at this time. And then we move to number 6 of the public hearing of the Shoreline Restoration Plan amendments. Ms. Spear?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. You have Al Schmauder here to speak remotely, so I'll give him permission to speak.
All right, good evening. Good evening, gentlemen.
Yes, thank you, Al. Go ahead.
Hey, Chairman Daniels, I want to thank you for calling me about trying to fix those fish ladders. I hope to get with you later this summer and get something worked out.
Yes, no problem. Thank you. Go right ahead, Al.
He's on mute.
Oh, you got muted. Okay,
All right.
there you go.
All right, you hear me now?
Yep, go right ahead.
All right. Tiffany was going to pass out a comment sheet to you. I don't know if you got to see that. It's about groundwater monitoring.
Mr. Schmauder, I did not get that before noon, so I did not forward it along, but I can try to open it here. Do you have it handy where you can testify off of it?
Oh, yeah. Why don't you put her up on the screen if you can?
I'll give it a try, but go ahead and start if you will.
Okay. So we talked to you earlier about the citizens' review of the Shoreline Restoration Plan. And one of the first things we mentioned was, hey, the creek's been dry last year. It was dry for 5 months. And creek flow depends on adequate groundwater. If you don't have adequate groundwater, you don't have a creek. And if you don't have a creek, you don't need a shoreline restoration plan. You could probably trash it. But now, we were not smart enough years ago when we set this annual meeting up to realize that your comp plan has a goal and 2 policies which relate directly to groundwater. And as we look further, we found, it said that the goal was to make sure the citizens of Lakewood have enough water. And that includes people living along the creek. They need water. And the goals, one of the policies says that the city is going to coordinate with other entities to evaluate the adequacy of the aquifer and its capacity. And as near as we could tell, the city of Lakewood has done nothing to implement these 2 comp plan, the goal and the 2 policies. And I know your folks are very familiar with the comp plan because you helped build it. And I think you'd be disappointed if you found that nobody cared about these 2 issues and didn't even bother to implement them. And the fact that these 2 go together. The comp plan says we got to check the water and how much we got. And the shoreline restoration plan says, well, if we got water, let's fix the riparian area. If you don't have any water, you don't have a creek. So I would like to see you in paragraph 3 of your letter to the city, to the council, add a 3rd paragraph as an advisory comment, not a recommendation, but advise the council that there's a policy, 2 policies and a guidance and a goal in the comp plan that relates directly to the shoreline management plan. And if you do not implement your comp plan, you may not have a creek in the future. Now, and what we're looking at is we have a fixed amount of water in our watershed. However, withdrawals continue to increase based on population. And the Lakewood Water District has agreements to sell water to 4 or 5 upstream purveyors. So we know more and more water is going to be taken out of our fixed amount in our bathtub of water. We need to be alert. At what time, how much water can be withdrawn before the creek runs dry? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? And what can we do about it if it does run dry? There are actions. For instance, I'm in Palm Springs today, and they have a ordinance on washing your car. You cannot wash a car in Palm Springs without a bucket and a turn-off hose that turns the water off very quickly. So there are actions that we may have to take in our watershed to reduce water use, to reuse water, and if we want to have a stream. So I would just ask you, alert the city council that this guy from the watershed council came in and said, hey, the comp plan and the shoreline management plan or restoration plan are really linked. So why don't we try to implement these provisions in our comp plan? And I've asked John Caulfield if he would talk with Paul Busich and Dave Buer and find out what they can do, and then talk with Pierce County's executive, Deermeyer, and see what we can do as a region. You got to work with the city, with the county and other purveyors, and try to make up a groundwater monitoring program, so that you don't get the rug pulled out from under you in a couple of years and find out, oh my God, we don't have any water. So, any questions?
Nope, I think that's it, Al. I appreciate it. Appreciate your comments. Thank you
Thank you,
again.
Dan.
All right, take care.
Hopefully, Tiffany, if you could provide the commission members a copy of my letter, I have the verbiage which they could see and perhaps help them prepare that 3rd paragraph, advisory comment.
I will be able to provide that to them after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Al. Okay, anyone else signed up?
Mr. Boki is here this evening as a attendee, just so you're aware.
Okay, Mr.
Councilmember
Boki.
Boki. Actually, I can do this and he won't be an attendee anymore. And then also in your packets handed to you this evening, as well as emailed to you earlier today, There were a number of comments provided electronically over the last 36 hours or so. And so those, for the most part, relate as well to the shoreline restoration plan this evening. I believe there were 2 or 3 different individuals who were able to provide comment that way. So if you want to take a look at that and be ready with any responses or questions that you might have at the next meeting, we can take that up.
Okay.
And other than that, there's no one else signed up to speak, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you at this time. So, anyone else have a comment or questions? Do you have questions at all for staff? Nope. Okay, good. So with no other comments or someone signing up for a public hearing, we will close the public hearing on the amendments to the shoreline restoration plan at this time. Thank you for everybody in your comments. We have no unfinished business. We move to number 8, new business, economic development strategic draft plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On remote presentation tonight, I'll be running the slides for her will be Economic Development Director Becky Newton. So Ms. Newton, go ahead.
Thank you, Tiffany. Good evening, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be here this evening to share information on the Economic Development Strategic Plan. So if we could go to the next slide. The Economic Strategic Plan was developed and informed by state, regional, county, and city planning documents and policies, as well as the City Council's 30th anniversary vision, also the comprehensive plan and the city budget, and as well as the community and economic development work plan. The framework for the strategic plan has a focus on alignment with the City Council goals for economic development. Next slide. So the purpose of the plan is to advance goal number 1 of the council's goals, and also to align the efforts across departments, as well as guide our work and have a way or a mechanism in which to track the progress. And the objectives for the presentation this evening are to provide an overview of the plan to all of you and provide an opportunity to comment, although you will be provided with a full document for review. And our hope is to get any feedback, comments, suggested changes by the end of April. Next slide. So this is the City of Lakewood's Council Vision Statement. I draw your attention to item number 3, which is sustained by robust economic growth and job creation. And that's really the focus of the plan. Next slide. The first goal of the strategic plan for the city is with regard to promoting and supporting a dynamic and robust local economy. So those components include adaptive and growing economy, as well as a diversified and resilient economy, and one that supports local businesses and residents. Next slide. So breaking the goal down into its parts, 1.1 really is about aligning goals and resources. So we want to attract and preserve family and high-wage jobs. Also review prudent incentives that support business as well as the community and direct growth through sound planning practices. The focus here is on wealth generation, as well as encouraging desirable development in our focus areas. Next slide. Thank you. 1.2 of the goal is to pursue infrastructure improvements. So if not for all of the wonderful work that's being done in terms of infrastructure improvements, roads, and utilities and so forth, we would not be able to do the development that we would like to do, and also look at catalyst projects that encourage future development and improve our underutilized areas, as well as expanding the utilities for the community. Here we're focused on advanced planning, as well as attracting investment and looking at placemaking for the community, as well as quality of life. Next slide. 1.3 is looking at quality and diversified housing for multi-generational community assets. So we look at policies and programs that increase homeownership and preserve existing housing, such as our rental housing safety program, as an example. So we wish to continue to support youth as well as senior programs, as well as preserving historical, cultural, and ecological places of significance. The focus here is to provide affordable options and to attract middle-income households and encourage a range of housing types, as well as mixed-use projects. Next slide. We also focus on key partnerships and collaboration, which is very important. We want to be a leader in economic development and continue to build and add to those partnerships and develop an educated workforce. The focus here is on alignment and building the partnerships and also leveraging opportunities that we have with JBLM. Next slide. 1.5 is to promote and facilitate a sustainable types of development. This involves creation of businesses, as well as attraction of new businesses, retention and expansion of our existing businesses, and also to promote entrepreneurialism in our community, growing industries, as well as supporting businesses that the community needs. Leveraging and improving our city assets is a continual process. And with all the great work that Parks, Public Works, Police, and we're all doing, we have a focus on continuing to build the city, including a strong brand that helps to retain and grow small and local businesses, and using placemaking to strengthen our identity and future attraction of visitors and investment. Next slide. So some of the things we look at with regard to market context include what does our employment look like, and are we experiencing any leakage of retail sales? So next slide. I'm going to get more into detail on those. One of those components is analysis of retail leakage. So leakage analysis is useful to evaluate the performance of an industry within a region or a city. And we can see where our gaps are. We use what's called a pull factor to show, as compared to the population, are we meeting the needs of our community? So whether or not we're providing all the services that are utilized by residents. So in other words, a pull factor of 1 would mean that we are meeting the needs in that particular industry sector. And more than that means that we're attracting more visitors or shoppers to come into Lakewood. As of 2014, our overall pull factor was 1.2, which is positive. And then if we also looked at 2019, and at that time, our pull factor was 1.4. So this suggests that Lakewood is becoming more of a retail center as we're pulling in more shopping, and the pull factor is increasing over time. And that's something for us to celebrate here in Lakewood. Next slide.
One moment, Ms.
Yep.
Newton.
Yes.
Just a minute, Becky.
Yes.
Mr. Pearson had a comment.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Ryan.
Yep. I was just curious, do you guys have any data from 2020 and 2021, or was it left out because of COVID, or what?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The reason why we did 2019 is because the draft plan was completed in 2019. So we have not looked at 2020 or 2021. That will be something that we will be looking at. But it's not included in the plan at this moment.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay,
Of course.
go ahead,
Thank you.
Becky.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, next slide. Okay, so another context that we look at is employment. So Lakewood has had an average increase in employment from 2012 to 2020 of about 3.1%. So this does not include all workers. It means employment covered by unemployment insurance. Full employment is difficult to track over time. And so this is why we use the covered employment numbers. Next slide, please. Growth has been led by increases in construction, as well as manufacturing, warehousing, transportation, and utilities, and government. Lakewood has had a little bit more increase in jobs at 3.1% as compared to the county overall at 2.7%. Next slide. Okay, so as mentioned, is 3.1% and county 2.7% overall. During that the period from 2012 to 2020, we've had a job increase of 23%, which is more than the county overall and outpaced Tacoma as well. Let's see. The next slide, please. We do have a higher proportion in government, and that is due to the fact that we do have Western State Hospital and other DSHS agencies, and then taking into consideration schools, including Pierce College and Clover Park Technical College. Next slide. Another area that we look at is journey to work. So where do people work in relation to where they live? So approximately 3,800 people live and work in Lakewood, and 25,000 are employed in Lakewood but live elsewhere, whereas 20,000 live in Lakewood and work elsewhere. So 13% folks work and live in Lakewood, which is lower than Tacoma, but higher than Puyallup and Fife. Next slide. Just by virtue of our location, Lakewood has a lot of opportunities. So we are right on I-5 with connections to major transportation networks. Also, our proximity to JVLM and the Port of Tacoma make Lakewood a great choice for business and opportunities. Next slide. So this map shows our target areas that we're focusing on for development and redevelopment. And we'll get more into detail in each area in just a couple of minutes. Next slide. We have both citywide strategies as well as focus area strategies by our target areas for development. Next slide. Citywide strategies are two. They are business retention and expansion. We do visit with at least 100 businesses each year. And we sometimes partner with Pierce County and the Economic Development Board for additional site visits, depending on the needs of our businesses. And the main reason why we do that is that it helps us to identify barriers and opportunities that ensure the city is poised to be adaptive and responsive to their needs and develop a good business climate going forward. And then the second citywide strategy is on media and promotion. So we have focus on building our brand. We have been busy working on our Better Here campaign, which is a citywide campaign to attract investment. And also we have a tourism website, nearcation.com, and that is funded through our lodging tax funds. In addition to that, we produce articles and newsletters, coordinate messaging with other agencies, including JBLM. Next slide. So getting into some of our focus areas, first of all, the downtown. Of course, the sub-area plan was adopted in 2018, and that area is envisioned as a rich urban area with civic amenities, mixed uses, walkability, housing, entertainment, restaurants, etc. It is also a regional center as designated by the Puget Sound Regional Council, and we do anticipate a lot of the development to occur, commercial and a number of residential units to be added to the downtown. Next slide. And the next area I wanted to touch on is the Lakeview Kendrick area. This overlaps the Lakewood Station District sub-area. It's called out as it is an area that's ripe for redevelopment, some tired buildings and so forth, but it's also what's called an opportunity zone. And the city of Lakewood has 3 opportunity zones. They are federally designated to help with tax deferrals for investors. And so the other areas are Springbrook and also Tillicum Woodbrook, and those are based on census tracts. So Lakeview Kendrick is really envisioned as a number of both commercial, but primarily residential redevelopment. Right now, there is about a 10-acre redevelopment under contract in the Kendrick Street area. And also capitalizing on the Sounder Station connection is important for this area. Next slide. Okay, the Lakewood Station District, also mixed use. It is, a lot of it is transit-oriented commercial development, which allows for both residential and commercial and a variety of other uses. Again, the connection to the Sounder Station, WashDOT is a potential relocation, and redevelopment on Pacific Highway is important as it's our front door, and it represents opportunity for additional commercial development. Next slide. And then the International District, a few years back, we did reach out to the businesses there, and some of the things that they would like to see are improved streetscapes, of course, and road improvements, which we have on the docket for the future. It is a very culturally diverse, significant commerce area with 3 grocery stores, and we focus on small business support as well as business retention and expansion in that area. It is one of 3 retail trade areas for Lakewood. The other 2 are the downtown and also Pacific Highway, primarily along the Lakewood Station District area. Next slide, please. North Clare Zone. As you all know, I'm sure the city received an $80 million contract to resolve issues of encroachment in the North Clare Zone, which is a 3,000 by 3,000 foot area at the end of the McCord Airfield. And so the city is working to purchase properties in that area and relocate businesses, hopefully to somewhere else within the Lakewood area, or at least within Pierce County. Reduced encroachment helps base operations and to look at right now, some of the missions have some inhibition or are inhibited due to businesses that are operating in the Clare Zone. So it's important for us to work on this area as well to protect the base. Next slide. And then Springbrook, city has put a lot of investment into that area, streets, water infrastructure has been added by the Lakewood Water District. There's a mix of uses, and it also provides a gateway to JBLM. There are some environmental issues. As you know, most of Springbrook is in a floodplain, so addressing those environmental issues will help to further support development in Springbrook. Next slide. Woodbrook. If you've been out to Woodbrook lately, you've seen lots of development going on out there. The Woodbrook Business Park supports industrial development. There's about 2 million square feet of development either already built or under construction or planned for the next year. And coordinating best uses long-term for this area will be important also for the city of Lakewood. Next slide. Telecom, also an area that the city has spent quite a bit of money in improving infrastructure, sewer, streets, public safety as well. We are looking to promote redevelopment in the area and continue to work with the Pierce County Library System to potentially either build a new library or look for a way to increase library services. And also right now we're looking at the telecom plan and areas that we might need to update for that plan. And next slide. The final area is Lake City. This represents an opportunity for more retail and services in the business area, which is next to American Lake Park, both for the residents that live around that area and for those that come and visit American Lake Park. And so that's an area that we'd like to spend a little bit more time in to see what we can do to improve that area. And the final slide, if you will, please. We will be, for our next steps, we'll be continuing work on the economic development strategy. And we are seeking review and comments from boards and commissions, such as yourself. And also within the full plan, there are specific action items for each area, as well as implementation plan and budget considerations. So we really appreciate your time in taking a look at that. And if you have not already received a copy of the full plan, Tiffany will be sending that out to you for review. And again, if you would please take a look at that and provide any feedback by the end of April, that would be much appreciated. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions now or take any comments.
Great. Thank you, Becky. Do we have any comments? Mr. Wagaman?
Well, thank you for that information. On the, I can't remember what slide, I didn't write the slide number down, at the third or fourth, somewhere in there, you talked about increasing wages or getting higher wages. What would those numbers be?
Well, that
100,000 a year, 50,000 a year?
Well, obviously it depends on the makeup of the household, but increasing wages. So what we're talking about there is looking at what are the industries of the future and what businesses that we can attract or help to expand here in Lakewood that can provide living and family wage jobs for our residents.
Okay.
So for example, just one example of a company that we did attract to Lakewood, Aero Precision is an advanced manufacturing company. Their average wage is about $68,000 a year. So those types of wages and those types of opportunities for residents to procure is helpful, I think. And all levels of workforce are important, but trying to find ways to encourage businesses to provide living and family wage jobs is a goal for us.
Great, thank you. Mr. Larson?
Thank you. Nice report. It's a lot of work that went into it. It's clear that it takes a lot of time to put in proof and all this stuff. So my hat's off to you. Would you mind pulling up page 13? And while you're doing that, I at $68,000 a year is that example. That I've just been through this with a person who earns just about that. and a little bit more. And he's buying a house, and the house he was qualified for up to $460,000. The new data out from the state of Washington shows that the Pierce County average household price is now in excess of $700,000. So that person that's earning what seems to be a decent wage is priced out of the housing market today, and so that's a problem. Page 13, I wanted. And the page before that actually is a page that I'm thinking about, is page 12. And I realize that these are 2019 numbers, 3 years old. But when we look at the miscellaneous store retailers, their business looks like it's down 0.5%, and that the non-store retailers are up. So without the number of dollars that is associated with the retail businesses to associate, it doesn't look to me like we are actually attracting retail businesses that are generating more business and jobs in Lakewood. That doesn't look to me like that's what those numbers say. And I just wondered if you could perhaps comment on that.
Well, some of that, yeah, I'll have to get back to you on the specifics of that. In terms of what those specific stores are, the retailers, there is also consideration of, the Amazon effect and e-commerce too. So we're trying to figure all of that out. And so, if you look at the miscellaneous store retailers, as you mentioned, so that looks like it's gone down a little bit, whereas the non-store retailers have gone up. So I'd be happy to look into that more detail to see exactly, what those were. Yeah.
Thank you. It just and also the fact that this data is 3 years old. We have a new Amazon distribution center in Lakewood now at Tillicum, and these numbers are going to be substantially different, as well as the new industrial park that's just outside of Lakewood at 112th and Steel. I think having these numbers refreshed or updated so that they're more meaningful in the current day would be helpful. Again, thanks for all the work. It's a big job.
Yep, thank you so much, Mr. Larson. Mr. Estrada.
Becky, good evening, and thank you for your comments, for your presentation. Question regarding barriers to relocation of businesses into Lakewood. You say we try, when the business wants to relocate to Lakewood, I'm sure they're looking for, shall we say, incentives, and the city may provide some incentives as far as some sort of tax break. What about utilities? Do we have businesses that come in and ask for a break, for example, on power or water? And if so, are we finding that the utilities are up to providing that, or does that sometimes become a barrier?
I have not experienced that so much in terms of utilities. Typically, we do like a comparison. As you know, we have 3 utility providers for energy here in Lakewood. We have been asked to do comparisons on, Lakeview versus PSE and so forth, and versus TPU. And I have not been asked specifically by a company that is looking for reductions. And typically those conversations are like with high power users. And so that they would have a conversation directly with the purveyor to see where they can realize any savings for their power needs.
Okay, so utility companies aren't necessarily invited to the table at the time. They would more than likely just work out a deal of such amongst themselves.
Right. I typically, especially if there is questions on power, we will definitely contact the utility and invite them into that conversation. But most of the negotiations are done outside of the city, if you will. And then, attractive incentives for Lakewood include, no local B&O tax. That's an attractive incentive, as well as no development impact fees, except for a potential mitigation fee in the downtown.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Combs.
Would echo what everyone else has said already, Becky, and thank you for putting that together. It's great to see that I think everyone here is aligned with the same thing, and that we all want to see Lakewood grow in a healthy way. And so this is encouraging. I had a couple quick questions for you. Not necessarily on the data, more of just in general. What is it you believe the commission that we here can do to best help with meeting some of these big goals? Would be the first one.
Go ahead with your second one. Oh, go ahead, Becky, if you have an answer yet.
Oh, that's okay. Do you want to? It's up to you. I was just going to comment that, first of all, your review of the plan, including the action items, will be very helpful to see where our gaps are, what we're missing, because, and your feedback is really, really going to be critical. So that's number one. And then also, areas that you see where we might have some challenges to be sure and speak up and say, ask those hard questions. Those are two things that just off the top of my head that will be helpful.
Great,
That
Mr.
sounds-
Combs, second one.
Yeah, the next one is how do you think we attract more jobs? Is it through more housing? Is it through more retail? Is it through other kind of development? What is it you think we can do to really get those jobs here?
Yeah, so there's a number of things. One, the main thing is the council's policies and programs that they've set up has really been beneficial to promoting Lakewood as a great place to do business. As I mentioned, the no local B&O tax. And so also the relationships, and partnerships that I mentioned in the plan. For example, we work really closely with the Economic Development Board, Pierce County, Minority Business Development Center, Impact Washington. And so really, as was talked about earlier, do you bring the utility companies to the table? So what we like to say is we provide wraparound services for businesses, whether they're here and struggling and need a new site or need to expand, or we're trying to attract businesses. We like to be inclusive in providing all of the services, or think about, what they might need, and provide that support to the businesses. So that's a really critical piece, I think. Those relationships, developing the relationships, and just being there to support the businesses has been really helpful. Those are key components. What the council does, and our follow-up, our ability follow-up, our accessibility, our willingness to work. It's not always easy to get through the permitting process. So our ability to continually improve on those processes. And if there are areas that need improvement, to address them. So just that open communication, I think is really important as well.
Well,
Great. Go ahead, Mr. Combs.
so I think one thing that I maybe just toss out there to the fellow commissioner, you know, I guess my feeling is in order to bring a business in, you need housing, you need retail. And some people will say it's the chicken before the egg, but I'll also say you need buildings where people can work in, because, you know, having looked at different locations for where to put businesses, there's not a lot of options for quality buildings within the city of Lakewood. And so if you were coming in and trying to find something, I think that's something this commission could help with as we look at, you know, how to facilitate, maybe it's zoning, or, you know, work with Ms. Newton on plans on how we can help encourage or incentivize some buildings that would attract a quality tenant. Because if you're a quality tenant, and I would say a larger tenant looking for 20,000 plus square feet, where would you go today? What building would you go into? And I'll tell you right now, I can think of zero. I can't think of a single one in the city of Lakewood that I would consider a Class A building that would compete for someone that like Bellevue or downtown Seattle. Now, we might call it a Class A building, but I can't think of a competitor right now. Can you think of any, Becky?
We don't have many. We don't have a lot. You know, the examples obviously would be City Hall and the DSHS buildings. But you're right, we do not have a lot of Class A office space in particular. So that is correct, your assessment of that. It is also very difficult to find space because of the demand for industrial office. As you know, believe it or not, a lot of the older office spaces are getting filled up. But yes, you're correct. There are not a lot of Class A, particularly for office.
Yeah, I only say that for everyone else. So when we're trying to find out how do we attract those high-paying jobs or new technology or incubate, you know, businesses, it's going to be very difficult if we have a C class or a B class building and low amounts of space. But and I'd say that in full support, because I think it's something we need to think about just to try and help the city grow. But we have to be strategic on where it goes, and I think you could give us some good direction there. My last questions are really related. I see the retail growth there. I like it, you know, and I see the numbers. I've been here during that time. I haven't noticed it visibly, which is a little weird, but you know, maybe it's just, you know, I get numb to it. But I would love to see more. I'm curious, what are the things that you have done as you've gone out, like Commissioner Estrada said, and talk to these businesses? What have we done to adapt to help make it better for the business so far? Like what are the success stories? Oh, we talked to them, we heard this, and we made this big change. And because I only have anecdotal experiences with businesses in the city, and I'm sure you have a lot more. And then I would also like piggyback off that. What are the businesses saying who are not coming here? Because I think their voice is probably just as important. There's a reason why they may not be here, and what do we hear? And maybe you don't have that data, and that's okay. I just am kind of curious if you could speak to those things real quickly, and that's all, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Combs.
Okay. Yep. So I would say, some of the things that we do, as I mentioned, when we go out and talk to businesses, providing the wraparound services. So some of the things we help to do for businesses, match them to workforce partners so they can find the right people for their businesses. Also promotion and ways to market their business, connections to government contracting, other streams of income for the business, and also connections. Our main goal is to make sure that they have the resources that they need. And so that's our main thing. One of the things that we have found that some of the businesses aren't really good at promoting themselves or telling their own stories. So we have started to do a lot more photography and video and showcasing businesses, which I think helps for them to just see that, out in the community that, we have these vibrant businesses. So it increases, I think it's increased the ability for us to connect with businesses and for those businesses to have a higher profile. And so those types of things, some of the, like I said, programs and policies that the City Council has continued to implement, adjust in terms of our sign code, some of the planning documents that we've adjusted, sub-area planning, those types of things have helped in making it easier for businesses to do business here in Lakewood and to allow more businesses to be in Lakewood. For example, utilizing the form-based code in both the downtown and the Lakewood Station District affords more flexibility for businesses. So those are some of the things that have been helpful.
How about the losses? Anything in common with the losses?
Did you say losses?
Yeah, the businesses that decided to go elsewhere that you might have been working with and then that have left.
I don't really have a lot of data. I do, mostly it's due to they can't find an adequate site. So especially in this market, it's difficult. So if you're a manufacturer and you want to buy a building that is 10 or 20,000 square feet, it's very difficult to find. And so that's one area that I have seen, folks having to go elsewhere. We have had a couple of businesses smaller businesses say that they couldn't maybe pay the traffic mitigation fee in the downtown area. So I've had maybe two that have had said that was a challenge for them. Let's see, that's two that I can think of. So mostly it's being able to find an adequate site, especially if they're expanding.
Great, thank you, Becky. Mr. Larson, one more question.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I wanted to apologize. I misspoke about those ratios I talked about earlier. The income was an $80,000 income, and the maximum home he was qualified for was $610,000 by the bank. So the point's the same, though, and that is that he was priced out of the market, or would be priced out of the market today. Secondly, one thing I wonder about is the effect of crime in Lakewood on our economic strategy going forward. For instance, in a Safeway parking lot now on Gravelly Lake Drive, they have a 360-degree camera. They never had to have that before, but they've been getting so many cars broken into in a parking lot. And that has to be, at least indirectly, some kind of an effect on our economic strategy. I wonder if you had any consideration for that in this study.
It doesn't really talk specifically about crime. We do in this particular plan. We do, as I mentioned, we're working across departments. It's important to continue to work with the police department, and they've done an incredible job in cleaning up crime across the city. And so, you know, we do something as an example in the downtown. We have what's called a retail watch program. So of course they have a new no trespass agreement that they can sign up for, but we provide businesses, particularly in the retail areas in the town center, there's theft. And as you mentioned, car break-ins and things that have happened recently. You know, as you all know, some of that's due to changes in the legislature. And so we're working on that to see what we can do because it's difficult to adequately, you know, for the police to do what they need to do in that regard. But yeah, please, if you see areas within the plan where we could add some information about policing and other things that might make sense, please do add that or comment. We talk about it in terms, you know, particularly in telecom, there's been a lot of cleanup in some of those areas in Springbrook. So I think it is an important component for Lakewood going forward to be a safe and healthy community all around.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it. No other questions? Mr. Weigeman had one more.
I'd like to pile on the crime one again. I end up at Lowe's a lot, and the shoplifters in there is just unbelievable. And, you know, Lowe's has taken the position that they don't do anything. But, you know, is there something we can do to help? And don't quote me on this number, but, you know, when I was buying power tools one day, the guy says, yeah, we keep our power tools locked up, but we still lose $60,000 a month at Lowe's, just in hand tools and those kinds of things. I'm going, that to me was just mind-boggling. And, you know, is there anything as a community can do to help businesses when they come here? And we're not unique. If you look at the news, our whole nation is struggling at this point in time.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, there are things we can do. One example Tacoma has done is create a business improvement area. So that's an area, I don't remember how many blocks it is, but it's several blocks. And all the property owners get together. It's administered by the city of Tacoma, and they have, you know, additional bike patrol and security. It's a percentage that they pay into and to this business improvement area. And that helps to keep down on the crime, especially with retail. Unfortunately, retail centers do experience a lot of theft in general. But that's one example of something that could be done is to create a business improvement area for Lakewood Town Center as an example. So that's something that could be done, but we can definitely look into other things. For our retail watch program, we educate, if you will, the retailers on by showing them best practices on how to prevent theft. So those are a couple of examples.
Great.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just add, you made me think of something there, you know, when you said that businesses provide their own security or security force. Well, if people do that, you know, if we work with our police department to deputize some of these people, or, you know, because there'd be a force multiplier for our local police if we did something like that. Those are some things that'd be interesting to me to see if we could help get more people involved.
Agreed. Thank you. I appreciate it, Becky. Thank you for the presentation and answering all these questions. And like you mentioned, just encouraged all the fellow commissioners to read the report and thorough. And if you have any comments and suggestions, send them to Becky so she can, you know, get this all together. And we appreciate it again for coming tonight.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time and effort in taking a look at the report and providing comments.
You got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move along to, oh, geez. My computer turned off. I gotta. I'll move right along. Sorry, lost my agenda. Here we go. Okay, so we got the next under new business review of 2022 comprehensive plan amendment dockets. The proposed amendments 2022-01, 03, 05, 06.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this will be relatively brief, but as you know, over the last number of meetings, we've been bringing to you parts of the full docket. There are 7 total amendments, but they're pretty weighty, some of them, and so we're wanting to try to bring it to you a little bit at a time rather than force it down your throat all in one evening. So tonight, we're going to work through these 4. The first relates to near St. Clair Hospital. There was a discussion about how historically there was a master plan approved at St. Clair. And as you see here on this illustration, in the northeast corner, there was an area recognized where there were tree stands. And the idea was to keep those preserved over time. Fast forward to the actual site plan, and you see that it's a slightly different shape, but it's still the same general area of the St. Clair complex. And what's being proposed as part of this amendment would be, you can probably see it most easily on the left-hand side, the parcel number ending 009, rezoning that from public institutional to open space and recreation. And what that would do is preserve the tree stand that you can see on the right, particularly on the far eastern side.
Is that something you can put on the screen?
Oh, I did it again.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry.
Dang it. Apologies. One too many things here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and again, I'll just back up really quickly so Mr. Pearson and Mr. Combs can see. So this is the original idea, northeast corner. Here's the open space as of the site plan. And then these are the 2 graphics as of right now. So again, it's this highlighted parcel. You can see on the right-hand side, it's particularly along the eastern side. A number of those are Gary Oaks. So the idea here is to preserve those by rezoning them. And St. Clair Hospital is aware of this and is in support of this as well. So this relates a little bit to what you see listed on the screen, some of the land use policies, 60.3, 63.2, and then implementation strategy. But also, as you know, the tree preservation code update process is happening. That group is meeting weekly right now, and you will be actually getting their presentation here in the not too distant future. So this ties right into what they're talking about. And ultimately, the recommendation coming from the Community and Economic Development Department would be to approve this amendment. The second one we're talking about tonight is numbered 03. And this is related to a full-on review in preparation of the state required 2024 review of the whole comprehensive plan regarding the housing elements. And there's been a lot of discussion, obviously, over the last couple of years about homelessness, affordable housing, and just housing zoning and policies overall. So this is an ongoing project where the city has hired a consultant to work on this, and it is going to take them more than this year. It's going to be into next year at least. And so we're just recommending that this be continued to either the 23 or possibly the 24 cycle. We'll just see how far they get. But the idea is to really do a robust review of the housing element itself, also some of the housing programs. So for instance, the rental housing safety program, the CDBG and home programs, and other things that the city does to try to both preserve and also produce new housing units, and come back with a really well-rounded and across the board and across departments and across policy review and recommendation. Number 5 is related to just a renaming of what are called centers of local importance right now in the city. And this really gets into technical wonky stuff, but long story short, the term center of local importance has changed meaning under multi-county planning policies to where if you don't have a certain size of that center, it needs to be called something else. And so what we're doing here is just simply renaming the centers of local importance in the city to centers of municipal importance in order to comply with that change at the multi-county planning level. And then the last one for this evening is the discussion about just some technical amendments on maps, which need to be updated in the comprehensive plan. Some of them relate to the sub areas that have been recently adopted. Some of them are the city landmarks, which have changed over time. For instance, they don't include where City Hall is located right now. They don't include some of the bigger changes with the sub area plans and the fact that we now have a sounder station in the city. So those types of updates. So that'll be coming forward, and the department again recommends approval there. So in terms of next steps, you will receive a similar higher level review, although a couple of these are going to require deeper dive. Next meeting, one of which is again the Tillicum neighborhood plan, which you've talked about before. And then there's also parking. If you recall, Ms. Brunel was here either last meeting or the meeting prior. There'll be additional discussion on that. And also the conversation about whether within the air corridor zones 1 and 2, which are the ones right above the clear zone, whether adult family homes, if it's appropriate to place those where there's a risk of flight problems. And I believe Mr. Buer was here to talk to you about that at the end of last year. So that'll be coming back to you. And then in May, you'll see there's the public hearing and then the discussion. You're currently scheduled to take action June 1st, but of course that's up to you. And if you need more time, that's perfectly fine. And then the city council tentative schedule is listed there for you as well, beginning in June. And that is that about the comprehensive plan amendments.
Anyone have any questions? Yes, Mr. Larson.
Will we be having separate work study sessions for us to discuss these amendments, or are they all planned to be conducted at our regular meetings?
There will be just the regular meetings, but if you need more time than what's currently scheduled, you're fully able to do that. So for instance, we right now have one meeting where you're talking about it, you're asking questions, you're making suggestions should you have any. There's a public hearing, and then there's at least one more session after the public hearing for the commission to discuss among themselves. So if you decide that you need more than that additional one after the hearing, that's entirely up to the commission.
Okay, I'm getting the feeling like we might need that. This is a lot of data.
Yeah, no problem. So I do have one quick comment is I'm glad that there is willingness on staff's part as well as these developers why we're going through this tree preservation deal. I noticed there's been some success stories with properties saying, they were planning to cut down considerable amount of trees, and this has been brought up to them. So they said, hey, let's work this out, and we can leave some of these trees. And so I'm encouraged that the communication has been both ways by staff to the developer, and from the developer making some accommodations without knowing that, hey, these Gary Oaks, it's a tree is a tree is a tree. So they look at it and say, hey, listen, there might be a way where we could save some of these trees on redesigning, repositioning. So I'm encouraged by that. I've read a couple success stories. So thank you. So pass that on to the staff as well.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Yes, great. Seeing no other comments there, then we move right along then from any other updates, actions from staff.
Nothing else from me other than you will receive tomorrow, if not tonight, the full economic development plan that Ms. Newton was just presenting to you. Please review that. You're welcome to send comments prior to next meeting, or there'll be some space on next meeting's agenda if you wish to discuss it.
Okay.
And then we'll get those comments to her before the end of the month. And then we'll move on into the comprehensive plan, next section.
Great, Mr. Boki, council member, Mr. Boki, you have any comments for us tonight?
Thank you. I really don't. I was on vacation last weekend and didn't make it to the council meeting on Monday. So glad to be here. Thank you for your important and I always appreciate sitting through economic development discussion. I think Ms. Newton encapsulated the council's philosophy pretty well as we kind of negotiate a lot of the things that all of you mentioned about available land and job growth and how do you be successful, and that's something we have to be working on all the time. So I really appreciate the presentation tonight. I'll leave it at that. Just remember, it's cleanup weekend. So clean out, get rid of all your stuff and your neighbor's junk this weekend too. I mentioned that last week, but didn't know we'd be meeting every week here now. So
Oh, great. No problem. Thank you. Appreciate it. No other comments? No other? Oh, Mr. Combs.
Just one quick question on the tree preservation. Are we going to get some more information on that before they come in? I just have a lot of, I'm not as savvy. Apparently everyone on the council or commission is very savvy on the tree scenario. And I've gone online and done some homework and feel less educated now than I did before. So anything that they can provide would be helpful as to, what our options are. And I look forward to whatever information it is. If we can get in advance, I will read up.
Well, Mr. Combs, if I could, Mr. Chair, that group is meeting on Tuesday afternoons, right at 5 p.m. And each of their meetings are recorded just as the planning commission meetings are. So if you really wanted to, you can actually watch their meetings. You can go back and see them, all that they've had to date. And I believe their materials are also available, but I'll follow up with Courtney Brunel and make sure we connect you to what you can take a look at ahead of time.
That sounds great. And yeah, I'll take a look. Maybe I'll have more questions for Courtney than she'll want.
Okay.
Great. Appreciate it. Okay, hearing or seeing none, we'll call this planning commission adjourned.
Stop listening.
Turn off your screens on the little button below and your microphones and lower your chairs down, please. All the